So thank you all so much again for having me here today. I'm very glad to be here with you. It's really so aptly summed that up for us. Today is about letting our light shine. And when I was thinking about the concept of letting our light shine, it really reminds me of watching a child, right? I saw Jamie last week at Unity Temple on the Plaza for Fourth Fridays, and he got up there with Victor, and he rocked. And he didn't care what anybody was thinking about him. He just rocked it. He was so in that moment and so in love with being himself in that space. And how often in our lives do we live with that zeal, right, that Charles Fillmore talks about, that zeal that drives us? And how often do we maybe quelch our zeal just a little bit because we're adults and we have to, put on some sort of show of being a grown-up maybe, and that idea of really shining our light doesn't come through. And so my hope for you today is to be inspired to live with that joy and that enthusiasm and that passion of a child, of your own child, of your unique individual self and your unique individual being, and letting that light shine forward today and every day of your life. So what exactly is this little light of mine? Well, Charles Fillmore described the concept of the inner light as the illumination of spirit resident in the center of every man's being. The illumination of spirit resident in the center of every man and every woman's being. So for each one of us, it's right there, right at the center of who we are. And I imagine that the song, This Little Light of Mine, not the Millie Webb version, because we know who created that version, but the original version of that song was inspired by Matthew chapter 5. And this is part of the Sermon on the Mount, which Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." Now, Jesus speaks of this inner light and uses the reference of a lamp or a lantern, or in their case, probably a ceramic container filled with olive oil, in which they put a flask of a little wick in and light that. And now today, modern society, right, we see these lights and we say, well, they don't give off that much light. But imagine we have no electricity. Imagine we're living in a dwelling with no windows. Now that light becomes even more important, because when it is the darkest, the light shines the brightest, right? Even a tiny little flicker of a light then shines so brightly. So imagine how important these lights are. And imagine in our world right now how important this inner light that we each possess is, and how much brightness that brings everywhere we go. In the Bible, there are many references to light. In the book of John, Jesus says, God is light. There's also in the book of John where he makes his famous proclamation, I am the light of the world. And here in the Sermon on the Mount, he is saying, you are the light of the world. So you are light, just as God is light, just as Jesus is light. Now, for some of us, this idea of accepting that we are this light may be challenging. Perhaps at some times in our lives, it's easier than other times in our lives. Many people were not brought up being told that they are the light of the world, right? Many people weren't raised in that way. But here at Unity, we know you are the light of the world, and we embrace that light that you are and that you bring to us and to the world around you. In my own life, when I first heard somebody say, in a Unity church actually, and they were talking about the Christ being the light, and this Christ is the light that you are. And I remember him having us repeat this, and I left going, I don't know if I fully buy that yet. Just kind of this, it wasn't here yet. It wasn't mine yet. And then I read Discover the Power Within You. You all read this one? If you haven't read it, this is by Eric Butterworth. And this book, along with finding unity in my life at the same time, it was like that life-changing catalyst into really knowing the light that I was, and then seeing it in others, and it's just been a beautiful journey. Along with the other things that Eric Butterworth has to say about our inner light, he says this: you are the very activity of God in expression. So there is no place where the light of God is any more present than where you are. And there is no one who is any more privileged to radiate that light than you. Let your light shine. So once we find it, once we claim it, and we know this is my light, and this is where it is, right here inside of me, how exactly do we go about shining our light in the world? And I'd say there are two keys to that. By embracing authenticity and your own individuality. Because your individuality is the unique way in which God is expressing through you in this moment and in this lifetime. As a child, my mother always told me, whatever you do, do something you love. And I was very blessed to have a mother who encouraged my love of creativity and of the arts. And despite her advice, and how wonderful I, even to this day, believe that her advice was, I sometimes found myself in my life not doing what I loved, but doing something maybe close to what I love. Seeing some head nods, you guys experienced this. So in my own life, I love doing art. I love painting and creating. I also have a passion for teaching. And so I went to school and got a degree in art education. Even went through the hoops. If anybody's a teacher, you know there's a lot of hoops that are involved in getting your teaching certificate. Well, I did it in 3 states because we moved a lot. And yet I got to that 3rd state and I found myself working as a teacher's assistant in a 1st grade classroom. And this was the same time that I found unity, and I was like, I have this light and I need to shine this light, and what am I doing in a 1st grade classroom and I'm not even the teacher? And yet I've gone through all of this, and so I realized I'm not being authentic to who I am, right? I've learned this, and I need to live this now. I need to be able to shine my light. And now, I don't necessarily recommend this, but I quit my job, and I started my own company. And I focused on doing my own painting, which is what I love to do, and on teaching other people to find what they love and encourage them to share their creative gifts, their creativity with the world. And that was my passion, and I loved it. I still love that work. And then I started getting this little voice in my head going, there's something else. And I was like, what else? It said, ministry, go to Unity Institute. And right away I went, no, minister me? That's crazy, right? And so obviously I still had some learning to do about letting my own light shine in its fullest capacity. What I was doing was essentially hiding that light under the bushel basket. Only maybe we wouldn't call it a bushel basket these days. What I think happens, and maybe you've experienced this, is that sometimes something bubbles up in us and it's asking us to shine our light brighter or to express ourselves in a different way in the world around us, and we start building up a brick wall of sorts. Invisible wall, maybe. But it's a wall built out of bricks of fears. We have fears of the unknown, fear of failure. What if I take that leap and I go out there to be a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, whatever it is that you're called to do and be, and it doesn't work? And if we're completely honest with ourselves, and I actually had to go through this myself, what if I go out there and I do this and I'm successful at it? Well, now they're going to expect me to be really good at it all the time, right? And there's these fears of success, which seem totally irrational, but they're not, and we all have them. So we build up these walls of fear. And this is our basket that we're trying to, in a sense, quench our light with. So we need to start looking at that and saying, I am not these past definitions that I've given myself. I am not the labels of the roles that I have played in my life. When we start saying, I am a mother, I am a father, I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a teacher, I am a doctor, and we say, that's it. This is my list of who I am. This is how I know myself. This is how others know me. We close ourselves off to any sort of change and growth and transformation, which ultimately life is all about, is that growth and that transformation. So what we need to start doing is recognizing I can remove these labels and I can step past them. I can add to them. I can add new ones. And ultimately, when we do that and we start realizing I am not the I ams that I thought I was in the first place. What I am is the light of God. That is the most important part of who I am, is my spiritual being here on this planet having a human experience. Now, sometimes in our lives, we get to this point and we say, okay, I'm going to step past this fear. I'm going to take down this wall and I'm going to walk through it and I'm going to move into something else. And we convince ourselves we have the best idea ever. We're going to open a new shop or, perhaps go back to school, quit our jobs and write a novel, right? And it feels so good to us, and we finally convince ourselves to get past our ideas of this is crazy, and we act on it, and we want to shine our light, and then we go and share it with somebody else, and they say, that's crazy, and we believe them. Has this ever happened? Where you then give somebody else your power to tell you, this is some sort of crazy idea. Well, that's not possible. Oftentimes, these are the people who mean good for us. Right? They love us. They want us to do well in our lives. It could be our family or our friends. It could be a teacher or a coworker. They want us to be safe. But what is happening is that these are the people who we're allowing to blow our lights out. And we need to recognize that and say, I'm seeing this is what's happening in my life, and I'm going to claim my light, to reignite that light for yourself. I've seen this happen very often in the arts, where somebody has come to me and said, when I was a kid, I took an art lesson, and my teacher didn't like what I was drawing, or another classmate didn't like what I was drawing, and they said, you can't draw. And so I've never taken another art lesson since then, and they believe that they can't draw. In fact, I had one woman come to me as her 56th birthday present to herself, came for private art lessons, and we sat and we talked about, just getting comfortable with art materials again, because she was afraid, really afraid that she couldn't do it. And she started painting, and we started breaking through those doubts and those fears and just taking one little step at a time. And eventually she loved what she was doing, loves what she is doing. This is about 7 years now, and now she has told me she's a painting monster. And she does shows, and she has her work at a gallery at the coast in North Carolina, and she's just so happy with her life as a painter. It's something that for years she thought, I could never do that. And it just, you can see, this little spark, and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter in somebody. So I think that all we need is to be reminded of our light, whether it is in a space like this today and just knowing our light, whether it's a teacher who encourages you to shine your light, to take that next step, a parent who believes that it's not so crazy for you to follow your dreams. And you could be the one who can go out and encourage somebody else just by seeing the light that's in them, knowing that they are the spark of divinity, and holding that for them and letting them shine their light. In my own life, in order for me to get past the resistance to the call of ministry and to be here, I had to claim that part of my light. I have to admit that I had a lot of work to do to release some of my self-imposed identities. And while I wouldn't recommend the process to a loved one, I know how much this meant to me. And I would not have chosen this process, but life gave it to me. In the matter of a month, I was given 3 bits of information that became life-changing catalysts and forced me to look at my identity of self and the labels that I had. First was my husband received a new job that required relocation. So we were getting ready to make this big move. So that was the good one. And then we found out we were pregnant. We were going to have our first child. It's the second big thing, and that was also a very exciting time in our lives, and we were very excited about having a baby, and it was planned. And so we were really excited about that. And the same month, my mother called me from the hospital to tell me that she had just been diagnosed with cancer. Not so great news. To make my long story short, and actually the process was fairly short, she passed a few months later, before my son was born. So she made her transition out, and then I became a mother myself without her. And it was in that process of being in a new home with none of my friends around, losing my mother, and becoming a mother, that all of a sudden who I thought I was, the labels that I had for myself, weren't there anymore. I was in a new town, so even my career, I had to, we were hours away. I couldn't show my work at the same galleries. I didn't have the same clients. I wasn't working at the time. I was just being a mom and not knowing what to do or who to be in that space. That experience literally stripped me of these self-imposed identities. And what I was left with was a greater understanding of God, was a greater understanding of the truth of that light within me. And knowing that in that darkness, every tiny little flicker of somebody else shining their light through a loving touch, a warm hug, encouragement, meant so much to me and touched my heart and made that spark within me start to grow and start to want to feed it even more and to say, what else can I do now? Right? Everything's gone. What do I do here? And in that process, really knowing this is what I need to do. I need to go out and share this story and tell people the tools that they can use to give themselves this opportunity for change without waiting, right? We don't need to wait for life to create such disturbances that we then say, okay, yes, I can step out into my passion. But to claim our passions for ourselves, to know that that light exists in us right where we are. In my own life, as I was going through this time of transition, oftentimes there would be little nudges, and I like to think of them as like spirit, just kind of expressing through different people, different places, and saying, here, keep going, keep going, keep going. And so I had my minister from my home church, just kind of one day we were having coffee, of all things, and we were just sitting down having coffee and probably talking about art, because that's what I did. And he just, out of the blue, he said, have you ever thought of ministry? I thought, well, yeah, I have. Actually I have. But then I said, but I don't know. I was still at that I don't know stage. And then I was meeting with an artist like a year later, first time we had ever met, and totally out of the blue, she goes, have you ever considered ministry? Now, when this starts happening to you and you keep getting asked the same thing, the light bulb starts getting a little brighter in my head. My heart was already opening up, but my head was still kind of coming up with those reasons why I couldn't do it. And then I kept seeing this same quote over and over and over again. I probably saw it like 7 times, and by the 7th time I was at Unity Village finishing up my SEE classes, and it was, for me at that time, the confirmation. It was, okay, I did it, and I'm following this, and I'm listening and following my heart and my light. It might be one that you're familiar with. I mean, I saw it so many times. Perhaps it's shown up for you. And it is from Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. She writes, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, gorgeous, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so other people will feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. So I ask you, what is it that makes you shine? That Christ light within you is shining. It's always shining. But what makes you come alive with passion? What shines brightly in you and seeks to come forward in the world and illuminate this world that really needs it right now? This world needs every light it can get. Seek to know your inner light through prayer and meditation. Practice stilling your body and mind. And when your thoughts drop to the center of your own being, let Spirit whisper your truth to you. You are the light of the world. Would you affirm that with me right now? I am the light of the world. One more time. I am the light of the world. And you are, right now. And behold within everyone here that brilliant, radiating, shining Christ light that you are. Namaste.